Welcome back to Small Changes, Big Shifts for a special show today on kindness. We're on day 15 of our kindness campaign of 31 days of kindness from the heartland. Mayor Q, welcome to the show. I want to give a quick bio. Mayor Lucas was sworn in as the 55th mayor of Kansas City on August 1st, 2019. What a ride it's been. As mayor, Quinton has prioritized making Kansas City's neighborhoods safer, creating more accessible and affordable housing and public transformation, fostering a healthier community, and improving basic services. Born and raised in Kansas City, Quinton has spent most of his life in the city's urban core. As a child, he moved often and experienced homelessness. Despite these challenges, Quinton remained focused on his schoolwork, earning academic scholarships to high school, college, and Cornell Law School before returning to Kansas City. Mayor Lucas, we've met a few times, and as I was thinking about this kindness campaign, I immediately thought of you. And thanks to Morgan, I got a chance to chat with you for a few minutes today. What do you think of when I say the word kindness?
You know, I think of the joy that we create in people when we are kind. That's actually what I'm spending a lot of time even working on these days. So, you know, we all know kind of that we should be kind. But I often think about what my steps to be kind to someone can do for someone else's day, in someone else's life, and in a world of challenge. And that is the story of 2020. I think that is so valuable and essential for us, really.
When you think about your journey, can you think of a story when someone was kind to you?
Oh, you know, it is, I mean, just limitless. But I don't think all the way back to childhood, and I barely remember this man, but I was a little kid, you know, single mom, so she was working all the time, and there was a nice neighbor down the street, old man and his wife, and I still remember I would go over there and read National Geographics. For all of the young kids, we had to actually read print magazines back then, and I would just spend hours looking at them. And I remember, I mean, to this day, one day he said, you know, you can take these old magazines with you. I said, what? Right? And he had what looked like hundreds. Now, silly young me, I didn't realize he was probably just trying to get rid of them. But I just thought, what a gift. And I could look at all of these things and learn so much information back at my own house. And that meant a lot. And it has been a lesson for me in many ways ever since.
Well, you know, we are in a challenging year in 2020, and I got a chance to hear Simon Sinek and Brene Brown last week on some conferences that I was on, and they've talked about that everybody's experiencing some level of trauma. You know, as I look back on 2020, I think about a few things that have happened in our city, that stories of people coming up and business leaders stepping up. Can you share some examples of how the business community has rallied around you, and maybe the police force had rallied around the business community and helping them? Maybe with like the cameras, things like that?
Yeah, a few different things. You know, one is that I think everybody has understood at times when it seemed impossible to do so. What do I mean by that? We had a stay-at-home order in Kansas City and throughout much of the country. And that was a time where it was really challenging. People didn't know where money was coming from, how they'd hang on, how they'd survive. But I would be on these calls with businesses, and I would think that they would be ready to go at me and tear me apart. And instead, what they said was, look, we understand what you're doing. We stand with you. How do we amplify your message? And I said, my God, right? It taught me not to actually judge what I thought was coming ahead. When I think about how folks have been good to our first responders, there was a time, we all may forget, when we thought we'd run out of hand sanitizer. And there was this premium on things like toilet paper, which never quite made sense to me, but hand sanitizer, everything under the sun. And there were a lot of businesses that helped us procure huge amounts of that. And I thought, how cool and how neat is that? This was the rare time, at least for a while, where everybody said we're in this together. And that pleased me. That really, I think, made things better for Kansas City, and it's helped us survive this pandemic much better than we would have thought before.
Now you've been mayor about 14, 15 months. What are some of the surprises that you're experiencing that maybe you didn't sign up for with this job?
So, you know, it's funny because I was on the city council before. So I foolishly like every teenager who goes out into the world thought I knew everything, right? I mean, I know the issues, I know the policies, the laws, all that sort of stuff. Oh my God, I didn't know anything. And I think the volume of challenges, a day like today has, probably 20, 30 different things going on. It's that sort of experience that I have really grown to appreciate. And I think that as we are looking at the future of our community, me understanding and having that perspective of that I always have a lot to learn is going to be important. And then the other thing is just knowing what your internal guide is, whether it be, I guess you call it your North Star, because we have all been handed a lot of things we didn't expect for 2020. I planned to be on vacation in October. I planned all these other things. And instead, we're dealing with a very different world. But if you know why you're doing what you're doing each day, then you usually end up in the same place, the right place.
How do you stay in tune with that inner compass, and how do you know it's your inner compass and not the outside noise?
I try to, one, you talk to the people who've been special to you along the way, and sometimes it's hard. I actually got a call an hour ago or so from my sister who called me this weekend, and I hadn't called her back, right? It's making sure you make time for those people who are important. It's also making sure that you don't necessarily always listen to that which is the easiest to get to. Social media is an amazingly interesting thing, but in many ways it's not, right? In exchange for being able to see what your college friend is up to, you also see every comment known to man. You start to believe that, oh my God, all the world thinks this. And the truth is, it's very different out there. And so that's why I've always thought, we should make sure that we get some break from that and try to listen to a lot of different voices.
Well, as I mentioned, we are in the middle of a 31-day kindness campaign. And as we're looking at that, here's today's, since you brought up social media, I'm going to tag on to that. Today's quote is, although the world is full of suffering, it is also full of overcoming it. And you've been a perfect example of overcoming it on many levels, and so has our city. And the act today is identify what social media does and doesn't do for you. And I'm glad you brought that up, because social media is a vehicle for us to stay connected. It's not a vehicle to harm us.
Exactly. Right. And I think that the issue is that, we need to get back to the sort of thing, and I need to do this too, where I am sharing a message, I'm amplifying, and sometimes some ways the interactivity is what is undermining the good message of social media. And what I have learned over the last year, but really the last 6 months, is that I should be comfortable with the message I put out, such that I don't need to manage it immediately thereafter. I don't need to contextualize the picture. I don't need to contextualize the statement, because I should be thinking ahead of what is it that I'm trying to share? Why am I doing this? Why am I posting this? If I posted a picture of me working out, which I need to do, it's been a tough year. But if I post that picture, then what am I trying to say? As opposed to posting the picture and saying, oh no, this is just part of a fight, and then somebody else says this, and then I critique them and all of that. There is, I'll use an example, and it's a time when I didn't do right. There are a lot of people that you may call trolls on social media, and they're trying to get under your skin. And one day someone got under mine, former radio host, and then I responded. And it was a put down, and it made me feel good for those 30 seconds. You're like, yeah, it's like dunking on somebody and having a tough line in basketball or something, which, by the way, I've never dunked on anyone. But it gives you that vibe. Whereas, and then after that, I thought, why did I do that? It didn't change his statement. It didn't change mine. It kept the vitriol going. And we allowed thousands of people to see the vitriol between each other. I'm not about that. And I think we should do better. We can do better. And a big part of that is making sure that you're smart about what you say, and you're not using it to tear people down.
What's keeping you up at night right now?
Oh boy, there's a lot. There's a lot. What keeps me up right now, we've got two big issues in Kansas City that are just a big concern of mine. One is violent crime. I continue to think about our young people who have so much promise, who have so much hope, and how we can and should do more for them. And so that's one. The second is I do have concerns about COVID-19 and where we go. Yesterday here at City Hall, we lost a long-time worker, a gentleman who retired just in the last year, who died of COVID-19. There are just so many questions out there right now of where to go, what to do, what should be open, what should be closed. I still sometimes just say, how can I make it so the pain that man's family is enduring isn't something that's shared by someone else? And so that is a significant area of concern. And those are just a few of the things that help keep me bald.
Keep you bold. To those people listening to us live right now, thank you so much for sharing this conversation. I'd love for you to consider putting a story that you've heard around Kansas City, whether it's in the Overland Park or the KCK or the KCMO side. We are one community, or we're one human race. And I would love to see you share some stories. I think about the story of the business leaders buying COVID kits because they were first hard to get, so we could test them. I think about the story of the business leaders buying cameras for the police cars. We started thinking about Black Lives Matter. So I just want to tell you, you've been a great leader. We've been on stage together about a year ago for Junior Achievement. And I was so inspired, not only by your words, I was inspired by your actions and your vibration. When you meet people, I can kind of tell whether they're ding-dongs or they're the real deal. And I was really impressed with you being the real deal. So I want to say, I just want to celebrate you today. On this show, we like to celebrate, guide, connect, which provide hope. And so we're celebrating you, and we're celebrating Kansas City today. If you had a couple words of wisdom of what we could do to help support this community, my listeners, my followers, anybody in this in the world that they could do, what would be the top 2 or 3 things that you would hope that we all would show up and give us guidance on?
I think there are a few different things, and I know all your listeners and you are folks that care and are engaged. Step 1, never get too fed up to try to make a difference. And boy, is this a year where one could say, oh, this is happening and that's happening, and there's a presidential election and everything's different. No, we can't give up. We can't give up on our young people. We can't give up on our old people. We can't give up on anyone. And so I think that would be step 1. In the face of frustrations, as your anger mounts, as your pain grows, understand the great impact that you can have on the world. So that would be the first one. Probably the second is to listen, and is to listen a lot more. When I think of our Black Lives Matter movement, when I think of some of the issues we're dealing with right now, I think one of the reasons we're at a point where we are discussing it is because for a lot of years people would say things, but we didn't listen to them. We saw them as one-offs. We didn't understand the cries of a lot of people that were coming our way. And what I see now is that we get a chance to say, no, we do. And you may disagree, but if you listen, then sometimes you get to hear what's underlying the anger. I remember I was interviewing for a city council endorsement some years ago, and the group was tough on me. I mean, just unconscionably so. Why are you here? You should be somewhere else. You're a sellout. You don't love this community, yada, yada, yada. And at the end, you want to huff and puff, and you want steam coming out of your ears. But I sat back and just thought, where is that pain coming from? Where's that isolation coming from? It's coming from decades of what they feel is disinvestment. It's coming from decades of carnival barkers that they think came through their community and didn't really care. And I heard that, and that made me say, I'm not going to fight back in kindness, and I'm going to try to understand where they're coming from. I'm always going to try to listen.
Where do you think you learned that from?
I was in a lot of different environments when I was a kid. So I was born in the inner city. My mom moved us to central Kansas for a while when I was coming up. So I knew rural kids and some others. And then I graduated from high school at a suburban private high school in the Kansas City area. All very different environments. One wealthy at the end, the others not. One Black, the others not. One rural and connected with farming, the others not. And what that taught me was that, first, a lot of people are the same, kind of what you said. A lot of people are going through the same issues. They may pronounce themselves in different ways, but it doesn't mean that they're not important. It doesn't mean they're not substantive, and it doesn't mean they're not worthy of our humanity. And so that's where I got it from my youth. And I have drawn upon it a lot of late, but it still has never led me astray.
So you gave us two. You got a third one? Or you want to stick with those two? I'm just going to give you an opportunity to close those thoughts.
I will stick with those two for now.
Great. What do you think is the biggest opportunity for our community the next 60 days?
Gosh, and that gets us to right after Christmas. How do we share love better? And it's weird. This sounds so ephemeral and all that sort of stuff. But people always ask me, how do we solve violent crime? How do we fix this, that, or the other? It's that we let people know that they're appreciated. We let communities know that they're appreciated. We mentor, and we mentor not because we're particularly astute in a certain area, but we mentor because we care about people and we love our community. I'm not an artist at all. I haven't done anything artistic in years other than looking at art. But, I would think perhaps, let's say if I was able to do an art class with, in fact, I did this a while back, folks with special needs, adults who are making artwork that they wanted to have shown in the mayor's office. And I have to remember, I need to put one of those pieces up. And I remember the conversations they had, and they said, Councilman Lucas is here. I'm like, who? He's not special or useful. But they were like, he's making time. That's what I think we need to do in the next 60 days in Kansas City. Maybe it's just a big love campaign. And, it's not money, right? We all get asked for it. We all do it. And you know what? And I've written some checks in my time. I know there are a lot of people who have written a lot more. But I have never gotten the same joy that I get from writing a check. And by the way, folks, keep donating. But I've never gotten the same joy from writing a check that I have when I've actually taken the time, shared my experience, and shown the love that I have in my heart for so many others.
Well, as I mentioned, we got a chance to share a stage here about a year ago at Junior Achievement, and it's very evident of your caring heart. And I'm curious, through this COVID experience, what has been a gift or two that you've received?
Yeah, and there are some, and it is certainly a silver lining. And I know of all the pain that lots of folks have gone through, either with the virus or economically or even educationally. But a few things I've gained. One, I had never really gone on a hike before. Silly me, never. I didn't know that even in a place like Kansas City, which, this is not Colorado or Washington State or West Virginia, but we have some neat hiking trails. And I got to see taking a 20-minute drive to Swope Park or Wyandotte County Lake Park or up to Parkville. I would have this chance to escape probably what were my daily concerns and really get with nature. Many of those walks I was with a friend that I got to know better because we weren't on devices, we weren't looking, we weren't consumed with everything else. Instead, we were just saying, what the heck? Let's explore our community and nature in a different way. And so I really enjoyed learning about that. One other thing was engaging with books and actually television again. So I don't watch cable news. It's for some, for others, it's not really a thing. Instead, I got into an American Revolutionary War series, Washington Spies. It was an AMC show. And I remember just being in some way taken by the costumes, the time, the stories, reminders of high school history. But I just thought, this is a good place to escape to. And escapism isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it just means allowing yourself to actually be a stronger person, to lean on more experiences and ideas and things you've read. That's what I've really gained from this, and I hope I keep it.
I've got a few more questions for you to keep you right on your time schedule because I know every minute matters.
Okay.
If you had a magic wand, what would you do?
Oh, gosh. There are so many options. If I had a magic wand, I would get everyone to see the humanity and really the commonality in each other. I think that if you see yourself, your spouse, your sibling, your child, your mother, your father, and the person across from you, it makes it a lot harder to shout at them, to hate them, to shoot them, to do any number of the things that ail Kansas City and our entire society. So I would create better understanding, create better empathy for all of us.
It reminds me of kind of what you said earlier. You didn't quite say it like this, but kind of understand why. Why is somebody hurting?
Mhm.
If we can understand why they're hurting, maybe we can start to have a real conversation. And why we're hurting. Everybody's hurting at some level. And if we could actually just drop those walls down and say, you know what, what's really important here?
That's
You know?
exactly. Yeah. And I grew up with some pain in my life. We all did. And I do remember I'd have these times where I would have that rough edge, like a lot of us do. And sometimes when the person finally left, or you so annoyed your significant other, or you've done whatever, you almost wanted to say, don't go. I actually wanted you to just see that thing that was inside. And I think as we tear down walls, it's important for all of us to make sure that we're creating that pathway for someone else.
I've got one final question for you, actually, but I feel like I need to say two. If your family was listening today, what would you? This is not my final question, but I feel like I need to ask this one. What would you say to your family today? Because I can't imagine how hard it is to watch somebody you love get torn up day after day by the media. What would you say to your family today?
I would say thank you. They give me such perspective. My mother's in town, and I'll go over to her house sometimes and see her and the cats. And I'll have this opportunity where I talk for a little while about, oh, this happened or that happened. And, she'll listen, and then we just move on to something different. Having people who understand you and knowing that there are people who will be there for you if I'm not mayor tomorrow and I'm long forgotten, it means so much. And we don't thank people enough for putting us in those types of positions. So that's probably what I would say.
Great. So here's my final question for you. What do you think your medicine is for the world? I believe everybody has a gift inside of them to share with the world. What do you think yours is?
Oh boy, it is. When I grew up, and I loved the play "A Man for All Seasons," the Robert Bolt play about Sir Thomas More. And the reason isn't because I'm super religious or anything like that. I am, but I'm not as religious as Thomas More. But I think as he rose in his career, never forgot where he came from and never forgot what he cared about. And as I've navigated quite a few worlds in my lifetime, and as I will continue to do so, I've never forgotten that experience of that elementary school age boy who was excited by the opportunity to read a bunch of National Geographics. That boy who was inquisitive, that boy who needed somebody to mentor him. And as I think about every challenge we have, I often think back to that. And so I would guess my gift would be always having that understanding as I go on and wanting to share my story with so many others, because I think in some ways it's unique, although all of ours are. But I think sharing my story gives us the opportunity to say to that next kid who's somewhere, and there are many of them, there's a way to this path for you. And that's what I'm interested in building long term.
Thank you for sharing your story with us today. Thank you for your heart. Shout out to Morgan and my good friend Chris, who are part of your team. And you're doing a great thing. I can say, I see you. I love you. I appreciate you. Keep shining your light bright. To all those listening today, feel free to give Mayor Lucas kind of a little round of applause where you're at. I know you've been sending some love in the comments. Those of you that are listening to this live, listening to this recorded next week after the election, remember to go out into the world with a soft heart, with soft ears and soft eyes. So Mayor Q, keep shining. All right.
Thank you. Thank you for having these conversations. It means so much to the world to have 30 minutes like this. So I appreciate you.
Well, great. Everybody just stay on. I'm going to bring my next guest on here as we keep on going. So everybody stay on. Mayor Q, have a good day. Well, perfect timing. Hi, Rennie.
Hello, Dr. Robin. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Did you get a chance to hear a little bit of that conversation from Mayor Q?
Unfortunately, I only was able to get on for the last segment there where he talked about soft heart, soft ears, and I could not agree more.
Well, I think it's a perfect conversation to start this one. Let me give a little proper introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, joining me for the second part of our episode today on Small Changes, Big Shifts from AdventHealth, our corporate sponsor for this podcast, Rennie McKinney. She's got a LCP. She's dedicated her professional career to serving others and focusing on those struggling with depression and suicidal behavior. In her current role as clinical director of behavioral health services at AdventHealth Shawnee Mission, she leads multiple teams on the inpatient acute care psychiatric unit, the intensive outpatient program, and the 24-hour behavioral health assessment center. She's also spent more than 20 years in private practice providing therapy to adolescents and their families. She's a licensed clinical counselor. Among other things, she serves as chair of the Johnson County Suicide Prevention Coalition. Rennie, thank you for joining me for a quick conversation, especially as we're dealing with so much mental health. And I love that Mayor Q was able to come on and kind of tee this up with listening. And you started to say that you got a chance to hear the last few comments he made. Do you want to tag on to those before I start asking you a few questions?
Yeah, it just resonated with me when he said, let's approach things with a soft heart. And boy, if all of us could do that, what a great place we could live in. We know we don't experience that all the time. And so taking every opportunity, every interaction, and approaching it with kindness, I think can really change things in our world.
Yeah. Thanks to partnerships with AdventHealth as well as Lockton and other people, we are in the middle of this 31-day kindness campaign. And so when I say the word kindness, what does it feel like? What does it look like? How do people become kind? And how do they become not kind?
Well, I'll start with how you can become kind. And I think a lot of times it's just the environment that you live in. There are some individuals that I interact with that kindness is just part of who they are. At every turn, they are doing something nice or generous or having a positive thought or statement about another person. On the flip side, you have individuals who really struggle with kindness. I think we've all interacted with those individuals. Many times that is a product of their own environment or their upbringing. And maybe they haven't been treated in a kind way, a respectful way during childhood or in their adult life. And so they tend to act that out. And so one thing I truly believe in is that each of us can act in a kind way. Some may need to put more intentionality towards that, where we really focus on being deliberate in those actions. And when it comes to mind, like, what does that mean? I think about the time when I walk in the grocery store and I see someone helping the elderly person reach, a box off the higher shelf. They didn't have to stop and do that, but they did. And if you witness kindness, you're probably more apt to then in turn give kindness.
Well, that's the ripple effect, right?
Absolutely.
The same is true if the dad comes home and we are hits the mom and the mom hits the kid and the kid hits the dog or the cat. And so how do we reverse that? So let's talk about a tough subject right now. Let's talk about mental health. And, in this kindness campaign, I've got my stats over here. Anxiety disorders up about 25. It was 8.1% 2019. Now it's 25.5%. Depressive disorders 24.3 versus 6.5 in 2019. And then suicidal ideation 10.7 versus 4.3 in 2019. And that was as of June 2020. I can only imagine how it shifted over the last 90 days. What are you experiencing and seeing in your area?
Yeah. Well, I would tell you personally, I thought I could do this. I can get through COVID. I was thinking it was about a week long. And then the second week rolled around and here we are 7 months or so into it. And I often describe it as having the foot on the accelerator. We can do it for a little while, but at some point we need a break. And so those stats that you just shared are not the least bit surprising. We do see individuals who maybe have never had any type of mental illness or any symptoms of a psychiatric disorder in the past who now are surfacing and are really struggling. For me here at AdventHealth, we definitely have seen an increase in individuals reaching out for the very first time. We have a behavioral health assessment center where we field calls from the community as well as see patients or individuals who are struggling and really don't know which direction to go. And those calls and in-person appointments have increased during the last 7 months. Unfortunately, we've also seen an uptick in suicides right here in our own county. And not every one of those are associated to COVID, but what we do know is that many times when that pressure is on over the course of time, if individuals don't have the right amount of support, they sometimes become hopeless. And so my team, I'm so incredibly proud of what they do each and every day. They are striving to reach out into the community, to let people know there is help, and trying to tap into the resources before someone takes an attempt on their life.
Speaking of resources, so let's say there's somebody here that's feeling hopeless, or they know somebody that's feeling hopeless. Who can they call? What can they do right now?
Well, I would sure suggest you could sure call us here at AdventHealth. That number is 913-789-3218. Again, 789-3218. Also, Johnson County Mental Health Center, who is a great community partner with us. They have a crisis line. Oh, and I'm not going to remember it. I should have had that ready for you. But you can sure Google Johnson County Mental Health Crisis Line. They are staffed 24 hours a day. The really nice thing about a crisis line that's right here in our community is that it's staffed by our community members, professionals in the community that know our area. And I think that can be very helpful. And that individual answering the phone will listen and then also assist hooking you up with the right resource, whether it be a therapist or a support group, or maybe just a kind ear right at that moment in time.
Well, it reminds me of Mayor Lucas talking about being able to never give up and then listen. And I believe that's what people need, is not give up, listen, have a listening ear.
Yeah. Throughout the years, as I've been a therapist in the past and talking to individuals who have attempted to end their life, 99.9% have said to me after the fact that I'm so glad it did not work. I didn't know that I could feel this much better. And with the right treatment, therapy, sometimes medication, if it's in order, people do regain hope. And I think that's, of course, why I'm doing the job I do, is because I do believe that there is hope out there.
You know, that's one reason why we're doing this kindness campaign. Through our research, we found that when you receive kindness or you give kindness, it releases the 3 feel-good brain hormones: serotonin, dopamine, and oxytocin. Can you talk about those at all? Is that anything you want to dive into a little deeper?
Well, sure. And so the research is very clear that it says as you do acts of kindness and those hormones are released, you start to feel better. And I think personally, I know that when I do something nice for someone else, often it's not just for that person. It's because I want to feel better. And so as those hormones are released, I know that that feel good component, or it elevates that mood, can last. And so, earlier you were asking, what do we see? What's some acts of kindness? And I don't know if you've shared during your 31 days. I've been getting my daily emails and listening to all the tips and practicing many of them. But I didn't know until very recently about ducks. And I'm like, what are ducks? And for those who are on the call today that have Jeep Wranglers, there's a thing in the community where you leave a little rubber duck on somebody's Jeep Wrangler with a little nice note to wish them a happy day. And I'm like, that's just one small portion of our population who owns Jeeps. And here they are, they're doing something nice. And now I'm seeing it posted on Facebook. That makes me feel good, even though I've not actually purchased a duck yet. I intend to, but it's a way of that sense of community, of building that sense of community.
Yeah, somebody's smiling. Somebody sent me a text yesterday about their husband getting a duck.
Oh, so they got ducked.
they got ducked, which was pretty darn cool.
Yeah.
So Rennie, when you think about your life, and you think about kindness, is there something that comes to mind of a kind act that was done to you that helped foster you through a hard time?
I might actually answer that a little broad, in that I think that one of the reasons I believe so much in acts of kindness is that my father was an incredibly kind man. And that played out. At one point, he was hospitalized, and he was a superintendent of schools, so he knew a lot of people. But in the hospital, as his Board of Education members and so on and so forth would come through the hospital to visit, one of the first people that had actually showed up was his custodian at one of his schools. And I thought, well, that's interesting. And I became friends and got to know this gentleman and realized that my dad saw everyone as a friend. It didn't matter what role you were in. And so from a very early age, it set the standard in my life that we need to be kind to everyone. And my dad exemplified that in throughout his life. And so I would tell you that I've been on the receiving end of that type of love and kindness. And I think it started at a very early age for me.
You know, that's why it's so important with this campaign that people are inviting their kids to participate. And whatever it looks like for them, have them play, because they'll start to learn that. You know, I'm thinking about a story, Rennie, when I was in college. I'm from Parsons, Kansas, where I went to high school, and I went to a junior college there called Lebec County. And I hadn't thought about the story till you just shared that. And I happened to be in a group called Circle K. It was the next level from Key Club that was in high school, and that was all boys. But in Circle K had boys and girls, and no surprise to anybody here, I was the president of that organization. And one year we adopted families, and we got a chance to. Somebody gave us a big old unicorn. I mean, a big unicorn, like it looked like a small dog. And we got to take, and I get chills telling you this, we got to take the Thanksgiving food out to this family. And the kids' eyes were so big. And, you know, just those little things. And I want everybody, I know we're in a fascinating time. I know it's hard. It's hard when families are torn about the political system, and our community feels less than because of the color on the skin or their sexuality. And how could we really just see each other instead of roll to roll or skin to skin? How could we seem soul to soul? And that we all have this deep yearning inside of us to matter. And I'm hoping that as people are doing this kindness campaign, you will never know. You will never know how that act plays out down the road, but you do it anyway.
Absolutely.
And know that every little act matters. Rennie, I'm curious on a couple more questions here as we start to wrap up. If you had a magic wand, what would you do?
Boy, I would just tap everybody with a lot of kindness and ask everyone to really look for ways, and very similar to your campaign, just each and every day find one way of going above and beyond for another person. If it's a warm smile, or if it's ducking someone, or if it's possibly mowing someone's lawn, whatever, that genuine act of I want to give to you, because the benefit of that is you too will feel better.
Yeah, it's such a win. It's such a win-win, without a doubt. So Rennie, what's your medicine for the world?
My medicine for the world. Just know that everybody you interact with has a story that may not be told, and by showing them love, that may be the warm smile that keeps them here on earth today. And so I think that we have to set aside politics. I think we have to set aside our vision that's discolored at times, and really just reach out to one another and come together as human beings. That's the basic. Let's be together.
Such wise words. Anything else you'd like to share before we wrap up this fabulous conversation?
Just I want everyone to take it beyond the 31 days and truly just continue to identify ways to be intentional in those acts of kindness.
Yeah. Would you give me the number one more time for Shawnee Mission too, so Desiree can put it in the show notes?
Yes, 913-789-3218.
Okay, there's the phone number for AdventHealth if you have somebody in crisis. And And once again, all I can do is say thank you for joining me on this campaign. It is so much fun. And I was sharing with our Locked In team today. I want to give a shout out to Sarah and Stacy. You've been an amazing partner, and Brooke for supporting this initiative from Locked In. And of course, my team, Desiree, Zach, Emily Morgan, Emily Algier, and Bailey. They have just done a wonderful job. But as we were talking about this morning, it's a great distraction. Being kind is a great distraction from the other side. And if you get, my friend Sally said to me years ago, Michelle, you have a lot of energy. You're going to use it for good, or you're going to get yourself in trouble. So I've decided, people say, oh, you're so busy. I have a full life. And it's by design that way, because I otherwise my monkey mind starts telling me all the shoulda, coulda, wouldas and all that BS. And so as you walk through the next 6 days, 7 days, 2 months, let kindness be a distraction for you. So, hey, I'm sending you all really big hugs. Rennie, thank you. And thank you to AdventHealth for supporting this message. To all of you out there, hey, let's do it. We've got 16 more days of this campaign to create a ripple that goes east and west and north and south. All right, I'm sending you all lots of love.
Thank you.